be doing Factor Cap or how it should have sounded every week during the NFL season. We'd mentioned that because we're going to have our pick'em and we just won't have enough time. But we thought about it. Niko plays a lot of fantasy football. My dad used to have a fantasy football team that I was the general manager of. So I definitely understand what goes into that. So we're going to give you guys our thoughts on some of the best, better fantasy football signings that you could have. If you haven't had your draft yet, or if you have and you want to work the waiver wires, these are some guys. We'll have our top 5 at each position category, and then also some sleeper picks. And we're doing running backs and quarterbacks today. Do you play in? Because I know some leagues favor quarterbacks more, some leagues favor running backs. What kind of league do you?
I play a little bit of both. So I obviously I have 2 QB league. I have 2 running back league. I have a 3 running back league too. I have a little bit of everything. The QBs and running backs what we're focusing on today. But these 2 positions are teams that like. If you don't have a good quarterback, you don't have a good running back, like a number 1 guy, then you're not going to be a top 5 team in your league. Let's just be honest with you. Any person could tell you that. So this is where you got to make or break your money in these first couple rounds, because getting a good quarterback that's reliable, that could be a good starter, that'll get you at least 10 to 15, 10 to 20, even more usually, hopefully, is a guy that you need to have. Running back wise, if you don't have a guy that gets you 10 to 15 every week, then you're in trouble too.
If you're born under a bad sign or if you're prone to bad luck, don't draft a top quarterback, because my dad and I drafted Tom Brady the year he tore his ACL.
I don't know why you did that.
No, he didn't. He tore his ACL week 1 of the regular season. So
I know, but still, why would you ever draft Tom Brady?
Because
if you live in Denver.
Well,
that's another thing I'll say, right?
I guess that makes sense. I don't know. It seemed like the right move at the time. We didn't have a backup quarterback.
That's fair.
I think John Kitna might have been our backup quarterback.
Oh God.
All right, we'll start with running backs. And my top 5, I have Alvin Kamara 1, Nick Chubb 2, Dalvin Cook 3, Derrick Henry 4, and Christian McCaffrey at 5. Give me your top 5, and we'll kind of discuss where we have our differences.
My top 5, there's a few guys we're definitely leaving out here that we'll talk about here in a minute. But my top 5, I have Derrick Henry number 1 because I still think he's the workhorse of the league. I have Dalvin Cook number 2. Dalvin Cook's the guy that I think is going to be everything in Minnesota. I have Run CMC 3. I think Run CMC could be technically 1 because if he's healthy, he's going to get you the most points for value.
I'll put him low because I don't know how he's going to look after the end.
Number 4, I have Nick Chubb because Cleveland is still going to rely heavily on the running game. Number 5, I put Zeke. I don't have Kamara in my top 5 because I don't know what I'm going to get from New Orleans this year. So that's the only reason why. If you have an unhealthy Dak Prescott or Ben DiNucci playing, Zeke is going to be the workhorse for that team. And guys like Run CMC, I'm just more high on. And Derrick Henry, if you're in the range from 3 to 6, you're hoping Derrick Henry's there, because 1 and 2, right now, ESPN has it right now as Run CMC is number 1, and they have Saquon number 2. Saquon is a guy that I'm very, very hesitant on drafting. Mm-hmm. I'm not very sure about him because you don't know what this team's going to look like if he takes one hit. He hasn't played all preseason long, and what's it going to look like when he's healthy? He's a stud. Don't get me wrong, but he's a big what if.
I think I put Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry lower on my list because they're a couple guys that are more one-dimensional than the other running backs on the list. And when you're playing in leagues, if you can have a flex, if you're playing in leagues that favor receiving yards more than rushing yards, having a guy that can be like I think of Alvin Kamara in fantasy football, and I think of that screen that he took on the Packers where he made his own, like he ran that down the field on his own. It was schoolyard bullshit all the way from once he caught the ball.
That's basically the Saints' offense in general this year.
It's going to be, this year is going to be interesting for them, but that's why I put him so high. And Nick Chubb's my favorite running back in the NFL. If I could block for one guy, if I could come out of retirement for one game, I would want to block for Nick Chubb. But no,
I just think Cleveland has so many other weapons too that also
they're going to have to incorporate OBJ back into the offense.
Also, don't forget Kareem Hunt's there too.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't have Nick Chubb as top 3. I would definitely have him if they didn't have another good running back behind him. That's why I'm so worried with Nick Chubb, and his health lately hasn't been as great. He's been a little banged up.
I would say best position for him would be if you could steal him in the early second.
Early second, late first.
Yeah.
Late
if he
first.
can fall to the second, that's where you that's like a sweet spot to get a guy like him, because when he's in there, he'll be the starter. But if not, I wouldn't. He's not a guy I'd go super high on in the first round. My sleeper in the running backs, I got Naji Harris, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher. Austin Eckler, that's a little bit of a biased pick, but he is a fantasy point getter. Well, when the Chargers have
There's
nobody...
2 homer picks in that. Two homer picks.
Well, yeah. But Joe Mixon back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher. And he's got the worst offensive line in the league.
That's why I'm staying away from him. That's
he's the guy that the last 2 years he's averaged getting hit behind the line on more than half of his plays, and he's still getting 1,000 yards.
That's why I'm not so high on Joe Mixon is the offensive line. That's why I'm so worried, because they're just gonna fucking pound the box, and they're gonna throw everything at Joe Burrow. Yeah, pause on that. They're gonna pound the box on him, and I'm not that big on Joe Mixon in general. For me, my sleepers, I have Javonte Williams because I think by the end of the season he'll be starting running back.
Give me shit for
I only have one homer pick.
My other homer pick was because I went to school with the guy.
I know. I only had one homer pick though. So the sleeper, this is my sleeper. When I think of sleepers, I think of your number 2 running back or your flex.
Yeah.
And these are those guys I think are good flexes. That's where sleeper.
Give me Austin Eckler as a good flex.
Yeah, I know. Austin Eckler is the number 1 guy in some leagues, honestly.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to copy yours, so that's why I
Okay.
So Javonte Williams is my guy because I think he'll be a starter in a year on Melford. Number 2, I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's a guy that with if Patrick Mahomes is banged up for whatever reason, and they key on Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, I know it's very hard to do that, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a workhorse that will get you a lot of points. He's a very good guy to have as a consistent flex guy.
Yeah, but Andy Reid sometimes just forgets that he has him. Like in the Super Bowl, they didn't. All the Bucks wanted them to win.
Yeah.
Like who was I can't think of Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles came out and said our game plan was set up that if they ran the ball on us, we had no answer. We were set up strictly to cover their passing, and they just never shit.
And honestly, if you're Andy Reid, why the fuck would you not take that into consideration? So, I mean, I think Clyde Edwards could be a very, very good number 2 guy flex option. And then third, a guy that had a stellar season last year, but got fucked over because his team is idiots, is James Robinson. I don't think Etienne is going to be the number 1 runner.
You have him up above Antonio Gibson because Gibson and Robinson were kind of talked about as the two.
Gibson,
the 2 rookies.
Gibson, I just think if they do start Trevor Lawrence, then they're going to run the ball a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'll give James Robinson the more nod. And having Scary Terry on the outside, that's a much better weapon than anything Jacksonville has. So that's why I think I lean towards James Robinson more. I don't think they'll give Etienne the ball as much. And the season he had last year, why the fuck? First of all, why would you draft a running back in the first round after what he did? Second of all, why that's the best thing that for Trevor Lawrence is having a good running game. Because that takes all the pressure off him. And James Robinson is a guy. If you're honestly, he could be a waiver wire guy because most people are going to think of Travis Etienne as number 1 guy. So that's a guy that I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on. That could be very, very intriguing.
Where do you think Naji Harris is going to go? Because I think a lot of guys are going to try and get him as a sleeper pick, but he profiles, especially behind the Steelers' offensive line, he profiles as a guy who can have a breakout year with them.
It just worries me so much because we thought about James Conner the same exact way. Like we were like, oh, James Conner could have. He was at one point in the conversation for top 7 running backs. I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
I think there's a difference in level.
Oh, there definitely is a difference in level of play, but like, does Pittsburgh want to give the ball off to him that much when you have Juju and Claypool on the outside? That's the thing. Maybe they will with Ben Roethlisberger aging more and more. I would think Naji Harris definitely is the running back that you're gonna want to draft. If you're drafting a running back, checkdowns too. That's the rookie running back you go after. I would take Naji Harris over Javonte Williams, just because Javonte Williams he's not going to be a starter right away. But Naji Harris could be a guy that could work into that number 2 option by the end of the year.
Anything else you want to say on running backs before we move on?
Running backs is just very interesting, and like it's important to get a number 1 guy, but I think there's a lot of depth after that. I don't think you need to go back-to-back running backs like you usually do in every year. I think there's a lot of depth because there's a lot of good receivers, a lot of good tight ends, obviously too this year that could have popped into that number 2 pick for you. When you have the number 1 pick, you're more than likely got to go running back. Maybe go quarterback from Mahomes. That's the only conversation you might have. But you definitely have to do it that way. But the number 2 pick, there's a lot of depth at the back end.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the way the regular draft works. Is if you've got a guy that you can pick in the top 10, you draft him there, but you don't do what Jacksonville did and waste a mid-first round pick on a running back. not necessarily going to work out for you in the back end. Moving on to quarterbacks, my top 5, I have Josh Allen 1, Pat Mahomes 2, Matt Stafford 3, Lamar Jackson 4, Justin Herbert 5.
I don't know what you're doing, Jimmy. I don't know what you're doing. How the fuck are you not having the MVP in your top 5? How is he not there? I'll give you my top 5. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, and then I'm putting Russell Wilson. Justin Herbert's going to be a good talent, but how the fuck do you not draft Aaron Rodgers with your top 3? I don't know. He is far and away better than Justin Herbert. I am putting all my faith in Aaron Rodgers over Justin Herbert this season. Justin Herbert's a big what if. He has good talent on the outside of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but they don't have as good of an offensive line. They're going to rely heavily on the run game with Eckler. Like, Herbert, I think, needs a huge season, and people are banking on him having this stellar season. Because he didn't win games last year. He put up numbers, but he didn't win games last year. And right now, I'm still picking I know it's weird to say, but taking Russell Wilson over him. Because Russ is just more consistent. He's a consistent guy to give you more numbers every single week. And then Matt Stafford, he may have a good year. Don't get me wrong. Could be a sleeper, but I don't think he's a top 3 guy.
My Justin Herbert pick was similar to what you said. I didn't want to have the same guys as you. I could put Aaron Rodgers in that spot, but I wanted to have a little bit different of a list. I think Matt Stafford, the guys that I have in my top 5, I think are guys that people are going to be overdrafted. So if you have faith in one of these guys and you have the top pick, if you want, these are guys that you should probably use your first round pick on if they're there. But I think that quarterback has a lot of middle. There's like 2 really good guys at the top. Few guys that you can maybe snag in the back, but there's a good middle in quarterback.
I still think the top 3 echelon is Mahomes, Allen, and Rodgers. I don't think there's no doubt in that. I think Stafford, Jackson, Herbert. I almost put Lamar as.
I was gonna put Lamar as a flex. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that I don't want him as like my quarterback. I maybe have him as a backup.
Lamar was a guy last year. Honestly, I had Lamar and Josh Allen at one point.
Yeah.
Because Josh Allen was a guy not many people drafted because the Bills are what if.
Josh Allen's also a guy that you can maybe play at the flex a little bit.
Exactly. So the guy, you can't move Josh Allen to flex because he's just a quarterback. You can't play quarterbacks at flexes.
Lamar Jackson's just a quarterback.
I know. You can't play quarterbacks at just flexes.
I
don't know. But either way, Josh Allen, I still have Mahomes over him. Because Mahomes' weapons. That's the only reason why. But Josh Allen is number 2, 100%.
I put him as number 1 because I think he's hungry and I think he wants to make that next jump. If you're a competitive person, you are happy with the progress that you made, but you know that your next step is getting to that Mahomes level. So I think that he's going to be on a new mission and it's going to be a more focused Josh Allen than we've seen, and that's why I put him as 1. But I think my sleepers for quarterback, I put Ryan Tannehill, I put Joe Burrow, and I put Tom Brady. I have my 1 homer pick in there, but I will say Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins are pretty good wide receiver core. Plus you got Joe Mixon. Like, he has guys to get the ball to. If he can stand up long enough, he has guys that he can get the ball to. And they were starting to pick up steam before he got injured last year. Like, Joe Burrow was on the path to be.
Yeah, my sleepers are also a guy that people aren't really talking about. I put Baker there. Baker is a guy that
I thought about putting.
Baker is a guy that if you want to draft a heavy receiver and running back early, Baker will be there at the back end of a quarterback because people are going to draft Tom Brady over him. They're going to draft everyone we said, honestly, and each of our top 5s ahead of him. And Baker's a guy that could put up very good numbers with OBJ coming back. Yeah. My other 2, I had Trey Lance there. I think by the end of the season, Trey Lance will be the starting quarterback. And if he puts up Mahomes-like numbers, that's a guy that is a must start.
I think that's the only thing that's risky about that is what if he doesn't play this season? What if he does truly get a redshirt year and then you wasted a pick? I
mean, with as good as he looked in preseason, that's why I'm a little more. Because if the 49ers start out like 500, I think they throw him in. If they are undefeated until like week 6, he won't see the field. Yeah. But this could be a scenario. Honestly, people are very much comparing it to Alex Smith and Mahomes for a reason. Because Alex Smith is Jimmy Garoppolo and Lance is Mahomes. Do they want to wait the whole season, or do you want and show him at week 17 against the Broncos? Funny enough, do you want to show that, or do you want to see what you got from this kid right away? Because the dude is talented enough. And then my last one, Cam Newton / Mac Jones. That's if you're in a 2 QB league, and you're looking for a third quarterback to have on your bench, this is the guy I want. Because whether it be Cam Newton or Mac Jones, or honestly as your backup quarterback. Because when your quarterback goes on your bye week, I trust Cam Newton or Mac Jones honestly to put up 12 to 15 points. Cam Newton may have a game where he rushes for 67 yards and there's more points on your deck right there. So that's a couple guys that if you're looking at backup quarterbacks that I definitely keep my eye on, one of those two.
Do you take into account, I was kind of making my top 5 based off of which bye weeks don't line up and which bye weeks I can maybe handle one guy not being able to play. Is that something, because you play a lot more fantasy football than I do now, is that something that you take into account too?
You have to match it up. When you're looking at backup quarterbacks, you look at who your starter is and look who they're playing. And who's playing who that week, because that's also plays a factor. Because you don't want to fucking have Mahomes as your starter, and then have your bye week Baker or Cam Newton be playing.
Have it be Lamar Jackson playing Buffalo.
Yeah, like a really good defense. Yeah, for that matter. That's a great way to put it. But like, you don't want that to happen at all. Your backup